My name is James Cape. Many of you know me. Some of you latest Intel alumni recruits don't. I spent 18 years at Intel from 83 to '01. I am the current president of the Intel Alumni Network, and joining me also here is Howard Jacob, who is president emeritus. This is the fourth in a series of discussions around career management, and career growth with Gina Riley. This next one is Path to Next Salary Negotiations with Kate Dixon, who's also a fellow Intel alum, who, by the way, our paths actually crossed at Intel Capital, I believe. In terms of how we manage this, please, for talking to your friends, giving each other a hard time, catching up, please use the chat window for that. And for questions for either Gina or for Kate, please put that in the Q&A, and you'll see that it is on the right-hand side of the share button. Now, with that, I think, Gina, with no further ado, I am going to go dark, and you guys have the floor.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. I am Gina Riley. My professional base is in Portland, Oregon, and I live in Central Oregon and beautiful Sisters, Oregon. I am so excited for this Path to Next session today with my friend, Kate Dixon, who I met at Intel. Kate, I think it was 30 years ago. Don't you think? Maybe something like that.
25, I think.
Oh my God. It's been a minute. And Kate, in my career coaching business has been an invaluable resource. And I am here to unapologetically talk about her book, Pay Up, which I buy for all of my clients. I buy it in bulk and I ship it off to them. And I am so delighted that Kate is willing to come and share her wisdom with our community. So I'm going to do a brief bio on Kate. So she's the author of the award-winning book, Pay Up, Unlocking Insider Secrets of Salary Negotiation. She's the principal and founder of Dixon Consulting, a B Corp certified leadership development and total awards consultancy, specializing in salary negotiation, service pricing advice, compensation solutions, and workshops and team building for organizations of all sizes, from startups to Fortune 100 companies. Kate spent the last 30 years working for and consulting with leaders in for-profit companies, including Nike, Intel, American Express. I can't say that next one. Is it Mercari?
Mercari, yeah.
Mercari, okay. Silver Oak Sellers, Graco, as well as nonprofits like the Oregon Child Development Coalition, Learning Policy Institute, is it the BOMA Project?
Mm-hmm.
Northwest Housing Alternatives, and period. She's a professional certified coach, and she's been a certified compensation professional for over 30 years. So needless to say, we have brought you the throwdown, the expert today. Her expertise has been cited in the Wall Street Journal, US News and World Report, CNN, Forbes, and CNBC.com, among others. She speaks for groups and gives podcast interviews, and she provides advice about leadership, culture, and organizations to the subscribers at katedixon.org. I will be throwing in the chat occasionally some of her information so you can connect with her. She's going to have an offering for you, so stick around for that. She's got advice and information, and then I have some questions queued up for Kate, but what I want from you all in the audience is to please feel free to put in the Q&A salary negotiation questions that you have, because I'll be keep taking notes, and I'll be feeding those to Kate as we go along. So Kate, I am going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gina. I'm super excited to be here. And, Gina and I knew each other at Intel, but we have gotten a lot closer, both professionally and personally since we left. And, knowing that there's such a great group of folks with the alumni group, I'm thrilled to be here and share my knowledge with you all. So what I thought we would do is I'll take you through the 4-part conversation recipe that I use with my coaching clients. I do individual coaching, but I also have a book which Gina, it's also right on my bookshelf behind me, and you'll have an opportunity to get it at a discount when we're done with this conversation. But the conversation recipe is something that works really well for my clients. You know, I'm very fortunate to have a job where you can actually count the results. And our clients have gotten really terrific results with this. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and take you through the 4-part conversation recipe. So 4 parts, and the first part is expressing delight. And this whole conversation recipe is something that I've developed over the course of many years, but it's designed to funnel your conversation in a specific direction, and everything is very carefully curated in here. So expressing delight is the first step. This is something that helps you put the person that you're speaking with, who's likely an HR person or sometimes a frontline manager, you're putting them at ease. And that's really important because salary negotiation is a collaborative process. And if you approach it that way, you're going to get a lot better results. So something as simple as, oh, thank you so much for extending the offer. I'm so glad that XYZ Corp thinks that this is as good of a match as I do. Simple, easy, puts your conversation partner at ease. So that's easy. And then the next piece is asking questions. This is not where you're requesting things. This is just clarifying things that are in the offer or that you didn't see in the offer. One of the most important things you can do with salary negotiation is read everything meticulously. Everything that you get from your offer letter to the benefits package that they provide, all of that kind of stuff. You're going to read it really carefully, but chances are pretty good that you're going to have some questions. And you probably should have a couple here, not 27 questions, not 0 questions, but things like, I saw in the benefits book that you have a 401k match, but I didn't see how large the pay match is. So could you help me understand the 401k match, right? That's easy. The reason that you're doing these kinds of questions first before you get to your requests is that they're typically things that the person you're talking with can answer off the top of their head. It's easy for them. They want to be helpful. And it's clarifying things that you need to do your next piece. Don't ask things like, where will my parking spot be? Because it's not really germane to the negotiation. And if you're an executive and you think it's germane, let's talk after. It's really not something that I would recommend asking. So the next thing is the piece that people often go to first, but let me assure you that if you express delight and ask your questions first, and then go to making your request, it's going to go a lot more smoothly. And so I'm going to give you an actual script that we use in coaching. If most people are going to make requests around base pay, sometimes they'll make requests around bonus opportunity or long-term incentives, but base pay is probably the most common thing. So this is a way that I would encourage you to ask for it. So you would say, my research shows that jobs like these are paid between X and Y in the marketplace. And based on my very special thing about myself, I'm targeting the higher end of that range. How close can we get? So I'm going to break this down for you a little bit. So we start out by saying my research shows, and the reason that you want to do this is you want to let them know that you're not pulling a number out of your head. And so you want to do research. You want to know what the going rate is for the kind of jobs that you're looking at anyway, but you're kind of helping them anchor in the fact that you've actually done some thinking about this. So my research shows that jobs like these are paid between X and Y in the marketplace. And so again, this is very carefully crafted. You're saying between X and Y in the marketplace because you want to give the person you're talking to a whole range of ways that they can be successful in this negotiation. And you're right, I said they can be successful. They want to attract you. They gave you an offer because they want you to come work for them. So X and Y, I typically say, 10%, delta there. So, but, as you get up into the bigger numbers, you could say, my research shows that jobs like this are paid in the low to mid 200s, right? Or you could say, my research shows that jobs like these are paid between 85 and 92 in the market, right? And you don't have to be super ultra precise, but again, you're going to give them a range in which they can be successful for you. So again, we start out with my research shows that jobs like these are paid between X and Y in the marketplace. The next piece is based on my special thing about myself, right? Think about the things in the interview that you've been highlighting that people are like, oh yeah, this is really great. We totally need this about you. So based on my experience with generative AI models, or based on my award-winning so-and-so thing, whatever that special thing is that they really like, you want to highlight that in this conversation. So, you're basically saying that because I'm so special, I'm targeting the higher end of that range, right? So you're giving them a range, but you're saying, hey, I'd kind of like to be in the higher part of that. Again, doesn't guarantee you're going to be in the higher part of that, but it gives them something to anchor expectations around. So my research shows jobs like these are paid between X and Y in the marketplace. Based on my super special thing, I'm targeting the higher end of that range. The last piece is very important, and that is how close can we get? And it's really important to use that construction because again, it's doing a number of different things. It's helping them understand that this is a collaboration. How close can we get, right? Not how close can you get? And you're also saying, it's not like, I want a pony for Christmas, and if I can't have a pony, I don't want anything. You're saying, again, you're giving them a range of ways to be successful. You're targeting the higher end, and you're asking them, how close can we get? And then once you've been through that little conversation piece, the most important thing, be quiet. Let them process. You're asking, how close can we get? This is not a yes/no question. You don't want to ask yes/no questions when you're making requests because our brains process those very, very quickly. You want them to take a moment to really think about that. How close can we? Well, how close can we get? I need to think about that for a second. Allow the person you're negotiating with to process. And that might take 30 seconds, which will feel like a lifetime if you're on the conversation with them, but let that air out, let them take a moment, right? So, they're going to say, well, gee, I don't know. I'm going to have to go back to the manager and ask them. That is actually what you would want to have happen in this situation. Very few recruiters or even direct managers have the authority to change an offer in the moment with a candidate. I've sometimes seen it, but it's very rare. So it's totally okay. You want them to go back and talk and figure out if they can do anything for you, and that's great. So once you've made your requests, then the last piece is ending on an up note. One of the things, I don't know if you've read Daniel Pink's book, When, but he talks about timing and conversations and how things work. And his research has shown that the end of a conversation is more important than the beginning and the middle, which sounds a little weird because number 3 is kind of like, that's where the big deal negotiation happens. But ending on an up note is something that is pretty easy to do. And don't skip it because it's really important. You have this relationship with the person that you're negotiating with. It's a collaboration. You want them to feel great because they're going to go back and advocate for you with the person who's making the calls on ultimate calls on the numbers, right?
What was the
So,
book recommendation, Kate? Daniel who? It was when?
Daniel Pink.
Pink. Okay, I got it. Keep going.
And it doesn't have to do with salary negotiation at all, but
Okay.
it's kind of a fun book anyway. So ending on an up note can be really simple. If you're negotiating with somebody from HR, I would really recommend that you appreciate the work that they're doing. So something as simple as, Gina, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing to help me close this deal. Or I really appreciate all the hard work that you've put in to help me come work for you, right? So appreciate them, thank them for their time, right? I appreciate you advocating on my behalf. Well, they haven't done it yet, but you're already appreciating them. That's totally okay too. And then the next kind of little piece of that is you have to know when you're going to talk to them next. Because a lot of people think that number 3 is the piece that is the most challenging piece of salary negotiation, but it's really waiting to hear back. And if you're waiting to hear back and you haven't figured out a time that you're going to talk to them, it can feel torturous. And I've had clients go, oh, well, I'm sure they're recruiting for another person because they didn't like the fact that I negotiated. That's not what's happening. I mean, I've been on the other side of these things. That's not what's happening. It's because, so-and-so is on vacation and this person is speaking at a conference and they need everybody in the same room and, whatever. It's not those crazy things that you think, but there's a good way to do this and decide when you're going to speak again. So, if they're going to go back and talk with somebody, you can say, hey, I know that you're going to need a few days to hammer out the details here. When would be a good time for us to connect again? And then, the recruiter might say, oh, well, I don't know. It's going to take, and then you could say, well, do you think you'd have a conclusion by Thursday? Oh yeah, I think I could have okay, great. Well, I have 9:30 open on my calendar. Would that be convenient time for me to reach out to you? Oh, sure. Well, why don't I send you a calendar invite so you have it on your calendar, right? And again, you're in the driver's seat, you're driving the conversation. It's not something that a lot of people would think of, but when you think about recruiters, especially at larger organizations, a lot of times they'll have 30 or 40 requisitions that they're working on, and they're really, really busy doing a lot of transactions every single day. And if you offer to take the lead on this, sometimes they'll be real happy about it. So, so that's the conversation recipe: express delight, ask questions, make requests, and end on an up note. And I promised that I would have a deal for you, and I do. So the book Pay Up, if you buy it from my website, because I don't have control over discounts anywhere else.
I've got the link.
Awesome. You can get 20% off by using Intel 25. That is, Intel 2025. That's why I just realized that it's a 20% off, but it says 25. It's for the year. It's named for the year. It's not good for the year. I think it'll be good for the next 4 weeks. So, but I wanted to have something to offer you. If you want to get that from my website, you're more than welcome to. I would love for you to read it. Also on my website, there's some free blog posts on salary negotiation and a bunch of other stuff that I talk about, but there's things about things that executives should do when they're negotiating. There's a new college grad guide for either you or somebody that you know. There's all kinds of stuff that you can get for free on the website. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love to be LinkedIn friends. So, so that's content that I wanted to cover.
We have tons of questions. Like we're
Awesome.
gonna be wading through it, Kate. Seriously, I did put both Kate's and my LinkedIn URLs in the chat, and I will do it again. We have a lot to cover, so I'm gonna go to it. Starting at the top, long before the offer process, we're usually asked to enter a salary requirement into the job application form. What's the best strategy here? I have heard we should leave it blank.
Yeah, and so a lot of places it won't let you leave it blank, but if you can leave it blank, I do leave it blank. Or you can put in negotiable if it allows you to enter text. But that said, you really need to be prepared because it's happening more and more earlier in the conversations about what your salary expectations are. So again, you can answer it just like you do when you make those requests. My research shows that jobs like these are paid between X and Y in the marketplace based on my super special thing. I'm targeting the higher end of that range. But some people aren't comfortable with that. And so you can also kind of flip the script a little bit and say, hey, I'm really curious what the hiring range for the role is, to make sure that we're in the same ballpark. That's totally legit to do with a recruiter.
One thing though to note is it is possible that if they cite the range, and let's say it's between 150 and 200, and then you put in there 210, there is a chance that the system has been set up to focus on the people who are in the range.
Yeah.
So that is a risk that you take if you're like, yeah, I'm not going below 210. So I'm just putting it out there. That is a choice you need to make. No one's telling you what to do. But if you have to put something in, Kate, like if like you can't even move on or submit the application, what is your recommendation? Do you hit like the middle of that zone? Do you just put the top of the zone? What do you do?
Well, I think you can, so I have many things to say about salary ranges that get posted on publicly and stuff, and a lot of employers, the range is $40,000 to $400,000. I mean, which is totally ridiculous. But if you have a good sense for what is normal in the market, you can put a number down, and that's not something that they're going to necessarily hold you to, because again, you're putting in a base pay number, but you don't know all of the other surrounding things. Do they pay 100% for benefits? Do they have an 8% 401k match? You don't have all of the things to put into the calculus. So it may or may not be the right number for you going forward. And it's okay to come back in the negotiation. They might, you might say 150 because you think that it's going to be the same kind of setup that you're used to with the kind of benefits that you're used to having, but it's not. And then you need to ask for more to kind of make up for some of the things that you're giving up. It's totally okay to revise your number. So, if you say 150 on the application, they give you an offer for 150, but it has like really sucky bad benefits or no incentive plan or whatever, you can come back to them and and say, hey, when I take into consideration the total rewards package, I'm really targeting this. How close can we get?
I've got at least 9 more. Aaron asked a question that a lot of people are going to ask, and I have some of my cheat sheet notes from your book, Kate, so I'm going to throw them in the chat while you answer. The question is, how do you find the information on what jobs like that are paid in the market? Meaning, where do you do the research?
Yeah, well, there's a ton of great sources now. Salary.com has, you can't do like a zillion jobs with them, but you can go in there and adjust it by location and all kinds of stuff, which is really great. We actually, in my consulting practice, we actually use a professional version of that data set in order to do some of our consulting. So salary.com, Glassdoor, there's all kinds of stuff. If you've got a professional organization that you're a member of, you can ask there, or sometimes they have their own salary surveys that they do. And then, if you want to like talk to actual people who are doing the work that you want to do. And, there's a way to ask and there's a way to not ask. A lot of folks are feeling more comfortable talking about their salaries, but there's still plenty of people who don't, they're a little squeamish about it, and it's totally fine. But what you could do is use kind of a version of our little script there to ask them. So my research shows that jobs like these are paid between X and Y in the marketplace. How does that land with you, person who's doing exactly the same thing? Does that sound like a reasonable range that I should be targeting? And that kind of takes the pressure off of them personally. But especially if they're at an employer that you're targeting, it can help give you a really much better sense of where you should be looking at. They might say, wow, that's like super low. We pay our people a lot higher. Or, oh, wow, that's nobody gets that paid that well. Your research is great. I'm going to go to my boss and ask for more money now, but in general, you're probably, if you've done research, you're probably going to be in the ballpark.
That's awesome. I have a nuance for this. So I'm going to read the whole thing, but there's the nuance in here from Mike. How do you recommend finding a reasonable range for the role, experience, industry, and location? I found that some of the nationwide pay bands for a role like engineering manager seem low compared to salaries I've heard from Intel and from competitors in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is you're likely seeing as an effect of that is there are deltas in industries. So when we think about how industries pay, and I'll talk a little bit about something else in a second, but when we think kind of in general, the highest paid industries are going to be pharmaceuticals and oil companies. That's kind of how they are, right? And tech is, kind of a high side of the band of that as well. Manufacturing can range from low to mid, and sometimes a little higher depending on what it is that you're looking at. And financial services and insurance and all of that kind of stuff tends to pay on the lower end unless you're a super high executive, and then they like pay them a ton of money. But that's kind of a general array of how industries pay. But what you should also know is, I've worked at Intel and I've worked at Nike, and I will tell you that marketing people get paid more at Nike than they do at Intel, and tech people tend to get paid more at Intel than they do at Nike. And, if you think about what the intellectual property of the organization is, if you're in that IP stream, you're likely going to be paid more than if you're kind of on the staff side of things, or not in the IP stream.
Excellent. Okay, I've got a few more.
Mhm.
So Angela's got two here. The offer, but the offer already puts a number out there.
Mhm.
What do you do if the offer is super low ball? And what if it's pretty much on target with what I thought? Should I try to negotiate a higher number?
I always think that you should try to negotiate higher, because why not, right? And you don't often have the opportunity to practice these skills. And really, I mean, salary negotiation is an opportunity to show who you are as an employee, as a leader. And so this kind of collaborative approach, we see the statistics are like 80% of people who actually approach a salary negotiation get something. It may not be exactly what you wanted, it might be something different, but better than a sharp stick in the eye, as my grandfather used to say. So
My experience is the people that I have coached who have asked for a little more get something, and it may not be base pay, but it may be going down your list, Kate, of like, what are the priorities, and literally ticking off and trying to get the things that are high priority. And then maybe it's something that's not as high priority, but you feel like you advocated for yourself.
yeah. And you'll feel better knowing that you were assertive and you asked, even if you don't get it, because then you'll know you've
Yeah.
gotten to the limit. And so that's helpful to know as well. And yeah, if it's a really low ball offer, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is get curious about that. And so, it's easy to get emotionally triggered with this stuff, but if you can get a little bit of emotional distance, you're going to do a lot better in salary negotiations. And I encourage all of my clients to either meditate or do some deep breathing exercises before they get on the call, because, again, you're going to be real anxious, and I get that. It's anxiety producing. But if it's a really low ball offer, what I would encourage you to do is get on the call with the recruiter or the manager and say, hey, look, I really think that this is a great match. Love the company, love this opportunity. This offer is a lot lower than I was expecting. And, can you help me understand that a little bit? And then just be quiet and let them, well, no, we have to, I don't know. I mean, and sometimes it's like, I work with an organization that has a cap on executive salaries because of some governmental stuff, right? And so consequently, if the CEO can only make so much, then the jobs below it can only make so much, right? And so putting that into perspective will allow you to know, okay, well, that's why this is, I can live with that, or that's why that is, and I can't live with that.
All right, I've got at least 9 more, so let's keep going. And if you're putting your questions in the chat, folks, you're going to be at the bottom of the Q&A pile here, so I'm just letting you know. So Angela asked, salary negotiation, which is already past applying and interviewing. There's cases in my personal experience that recruiters ask about the rate and the salary up front. That happens a lot. So how would you do that right on the front end, Kate?
Yeah, I think this is the salary expectations conversation that we talked about a little bit earlier. So,
Okay.
so, again, depending on where you are in terms of, do you have other offers? Are you currently in a place that you really love, and this is not something that you have a lot of skin in the game for? You can be really upfront about it. And, even if you really want this and everything, you can be upfront too. But one of the ways I would say to the recruiter is, I don't want to waste anybody's time. Really need to understand what the hiring rate for this role is to make sure that we're aligned here. That's one way to do it. Or you could say, hey, I have some expectations of salary of 200 and the low 200s. Just want to make sure that that is within the salary range. Those are 2 ways to do it.
It's super important to get that clarity, because sometimes you have to understand that the recruiter, and I'm using my recruiter hat, I am affiliated with Talents Group and I've done executive search. And if I'm working with a client for an exec search and their top out is a certain number and I know they're not going to go over, I've already had the hard conversation, then you need to know that as a candidate up front. It's not something that you're going to go to battle with and say, they see the light, I'm so great, they're going to go over that. So, just read the room is what I guess what I would come back to. All right, I've got a ton more questions. So this is from Timothy. I assume it would be proper to mention the hard and unchangeable vacation time off already scheduled during the tail end of the make request part of the base pay and all of that. Is that correct? And do you have any recommendations on how to handle, some of those questions?
So I actually think that you wait to the second conversation to have that happen, because you don't want to cloud up, you don't want to be asking for things that that may get in the way of them saying yes to some of the long-term stuff, right? So yeah, and it is important. And I've been on both sides of the negotiation where it's like, oh, I got, this has been planned for a year and, we've already bought the tickets and everything. So I get that it's really important, but most times with salary negotiations, you're going to have two conversations. If you're an executive, you're likely going to have probably three, or if you've got relocation to consider in there, you're probably going to have at least three as well. So the first conversation really should be the big ticket items. So base pay, long-term incentives, short-term incentives, right? So that's kind of what you would talk about first. The second conversation would be, if you're having a reload conversation, you probably want to, hit some of those things. If you have access to an employment agreement, that's really where you're going to talk about some of those things. And the third one would be kind of finalizing everything. So, I would defer that conversation about, my vacation stuff to the, second or third conversation, because you want really all of the terms kind of set before you. And
Right.
you can say, hey, I'm getting married this year, and so I just need you to know that we've got some things that are already on calendar, and let's talk about
Let's work together on it. Okay. I have the questions keep piling in. And so we're going to do as much as we can for about 10 more minutes. But Kate, just for time's sake, I have at least 10 that are in the queue. And again, if your questions are in the actual chat, I'm not looking there. So Autumn asked, my question is, should you apply for jobs that interest you, but the advertised salary range is out of your range, specifically lower than your range? Can you expect to negotiate higher than the advertised range? I have opinions, Kate. What are yours?
I think our opinions are aligned.
Okay.
It would be very unusual for them to do that. And the only real way that you're going to get them to move off of that is if you are kind of like a one and only. I mean, I had a client who saw the range, and they had contacted her, and she saw the range and it was lower than she wanted. And so we talked about how to approach it. And she was able to negotiate something that was above, but that's pretty unusual. And again, if you have unique skills, especially if you're bringing in a new capability that the organization doesn't have, and you're expected to train people up on that or whatever, then you might have some room to go above the range. But I think in general, no, probably not.
I'm going to throw in one small opinion here as well, which is, if you're applying online and you expect them to see you as that magical unicorn that we're going to pay more than the range, you must network into that opportunity. They're not going to pluck you out of 500 applicants and say, here's the one, and we're gonna definitely go and seek out more budget. Network. So that's what I would say. Just a short answer on my end. So this one, I'm hoping we can answer kind of quickly, because we've got a bunch more. And this is it okay to ask for things that aren't normally part of the offering but are important to you, like childcare options, which can be really helpful for parents? Is this something that you can provide company, or should you not ask it, Kate?
Well, I think you can do, especially you're really only going to see that with larger companies or companies that are in the business of childcare, and they're usually going to be upfront about that. And you can do research on the web to see if that's something that they mention. But again, this is something that, if it is passionate and important to you, again, I would defer that to a later conversation. But if it's really unusual and you don't know of anybody who gets that, I probably wouldn't include it. The only exception there is if you're moving to a new location, especially a new country. It would, as part of this offer, you can ask what kinds of support do they have to help folks identify childcare or education opportunities?
I love that. I like that twist, Kate. Thank you. So this is one that's not geared toward our community. So if you could just name off one or two resources that'd be helpful for this individual. We're being asked, you mentioned there's special guidance for you mentioned there's special guidance for new college grads. Many of us have kids at that stage of life. Kate and I are in there. Could you share a nugget or two? Thanks so much. So first of all, I would say this book Pay Up is for anybody because it's very practical advice and it's written with Kate's amazing intellect and her humor. It's a fun read. So I would say get that book, one. And she's giving you a discount. But Kate, where would you send our college kids?
So, college kids, one of the things that I found, I'm flogging my book, I know, but one of the things I do speak at colleges quite a bit, and especially for folks who are first gen college grads who don't have family members who have worked in salaried jobs and things like that. A lot of times, and even ones who have, I mean, even people who may or may not be related to me, don't always understand what the elements of pay are. So, base pay, what does that mean? Bonus, what is that? Stock, I don't understand. What is normal with benefits? I pay for insurance and why doesn't pay everything, all of that kind of stuff. And so I do run down, the list of total rewards elements in the book, and try to educate people about that. I think that's one of the really important things to understand your offer. But in general, steering folks to their placement office can be helpful. They've got a lot of resources and they're speaking with the recruiters from the companies and stuff directly. So they can have some really good information as well.
Awesome. And I put the same thing you said, our college kids need to know the total rewards. And your book covers this very well. Okay, another question is, sometimes this is a good one, we haven't had it yet. Sometimes the salary negotiation also requires a change of grade or level or title. Do you negotiate just the salary and let them figure out the rest, or do you negotiate both? Again, I have opinions. You go, Kate.
Yeah, well, sometimes those, kind of grade and title and all of that kind of stuff can be a challenge to negotiate. That's not saying you shouldn't do it, especially for folks who are, VPs and they want to go to another VP title. The fact of the matter is that titling differs among organizations. And when I was at Intel, we had very, very depressed titles. The head of total rewards was a manager, and in any other organization of that size would have been like an SVP. So, again, titling can vary between organizations. And so you might think, well, I should be a VP. And, you go to a place like Intel and there's like the VP of human resources, and that's the only VP that is in that entire 700 person body. It wouldn't be a normal thing to ask. But I mean, again, it is helpful for recruiters to know what the expectations are, and you may or may not be able to get that. In terms of like negotiating a ban and all that kind of stuff, you would have to have a lot of internal knowledge of the organization in order to do that effectively. And even so, you may not be able to make that happen. What are your thoughts?
So the one ad I have is, it is really difficult to go back once a grade or a title has been set, because oftentimes you need to perform in that new role, and it's rare. It has happened to some of my clients that they'll get a promotion earlier than expected, or they'll negotiate that once they get in. But we all know, being at an Intel, that it can't be like beating your head against the door. They have to consider who all they're promoting, and there's a lot of stats behind that. So do your research in advance, know what you're asking for, and if you have to let go of what your ideal was, that specific title or grade. Know that you've done your best because you knew what you were asking for. And you have to be in a place of peace with what you end up with if you say yes. So that's my ad. Next question, how does salary negotiation for grade level and title fit into the salary negotiations? I feel like we kind of answered that. Yeah, okay. So hopefully Matt, that answered that. And if not, please clarify anything further that you didn't get. And then we've got, when do you know when to stop the negotiations process? How much should you push? Does it look bad if you do? And I love this question in particular because a lot of my female clients really get concerned about the impression that they're making, because there are gender discrepancies on how we show up and behave, right, Kate? So, you know, am I being perceived as pushy or the B word or any of those things? Or, you know, where a man might be like, yeah, they swung for the fences. So
Yeah.
what is your opinion about when you stop?
Well, so, again, if you think about this as a collaborative discussion, you're solving a business problem. So think about how you would solve another business problem. If you didn't get exactly what you wanted, you wouldn't keep like pounding it and pounding it and pounding it, right? So collaboration is key. And situational awareness is your friend. Gina said earlier, read the room. This is really important because you'll start to notice signs of what I call negotiation fatigue. But again, if you're limiting yourself to asking for, two, maybe three different things in your negotiation, that'll be fine. And if you need more, because maybe you want to get at base pay and long-term incentives on the first conversation, and you want to talk about, driving your Great Danes cross country because they can't go on a plane. In your second conversation about relocation, that's totally okay. But, be situationally aware, read the room, and you won't be considered pushy if you're making the request. I mean, if you make the request, hey, I'm trying to move the pay up 10%, right? And they come back and they can move it up 5%. Again, should you go back for another round of negotiation? Probably not. But only you can decide.
And again, I'm gonna remind folks, and I put this in the chat, it's super important that you know your unique value proposition. I call it the UVP. If
Yeah.
you don't understand the why behind what you're asking, other than I just want it or I deserve it, that's not a powerful enough place, to come from. So know what it is that your secret sauce is, that, hey, when you hire me, you're gonna get this. And
Right.
that's why it's worth it. So I just want to remind folks of that. All right, I've got more. Can you please talk about sign-on bonus? Any other perks that I should bring up in my requests?
So sign-on bonuses are something that I recommend doing in the second conversation, because you want to see how much you can get with like everything that you're going to have on the regular. So your base pay, your bonus, your long-term incentive. And I typically will recommend that people are using sign-on bonus for two different things. One is to make up for what you're leaving on the table. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about bonus. So if you have been with the company, your former company, until June, and you're leaving in June, and the bonus doesn't pay out until December, we would estimate like half of your bonus target. That would be something that would go into that. When we look at long-term incentives, we would look at the value of the stock that would vest in the next 2 years. 24 months. I'm not talking, in almost 36 months. We're talking about 24 months. That is a typical thing that we would look at. And then the third thing, or the second thing, however you want to think about it, is really to sweeten the offer. So if you've asked for some things with base pay and they're not able to do it, then, you know, you can have a case to ask for that. If they don't, you know, for our new college grads, if they don't offer relocation, but they expect you to relocate, a sign-on bonus is a perfect place to ask for that. So that's kind of how I think about sign-on bonuses.
Thank you, Kate. And then a nuance from that, I feel like you just touched on some of that with relo, but do relocation packages have room for negotiation? My short answer is everything has some element of negotiation. Not will you provide childcare if that's not a thing, but you know, like you said, relocation, nuances, salary, it's the total rewards, right? So what would you say, is there a nuance with relocation that you would throw in there?
Yes and no. So typically companies assign relocation benefits by the level of the job.
Mhm.
So, you know, the overall package, you probably won't have any room for negotiation. You know, with bigger companies, they typically have things striated in that way. However, you know, like the example that I gave about the Great Danes moving across the country, that is an actual example. Um, and um, and this person, um, you know, wanted to bring her dogs with her, and was not able to do it within the normal relocation package that they had. So, so in, you know, in exchange for, um, getting, you know, flights for herself and her spouse and her dogs, she negotiated to, instead rent a van and have, hotels, comped on the trip across the country because, you know, she wasn't able to move that way, the normal way. And that's something to ask for. Now, if you have, you know, a fancy car collection and 26 cars that you would like the company to move, it's probably not going to happen for you, but you can ask. I mean, you can always ask, you know, hey, you know, I have a piano
Mm.
and I want to make sure that we can move that. Is that something that would be included? Is that something that you could do a rider for? Whatever.
So Kate, are there ranges published for sign-on bonuses by organization or level? Is there some place to get some read on that?
No, I mean, one of the rules of thumb that I use now, this is not considering the walkaway value that we talked about earlier, but in general, I think about 10% of the base pay, you
Okay.
know, as a rule of thumb. It doesn't, I mean, you know, again, if you've got a recent college grad who's, you know, making 60 grand, asking for 7,500, not out of the question at all. But if you're, you know, I mean, again, it's a rule of thumb. You can, there's not any benchmarking around it.
Okay, thank you for that. Joseph's got a really great question that I think is super relevant today with all the layoffs and the churn, which is what are some strategies to negotiate a minimum severance as a part of the salary negotiation process? I have had executives that I have worked with and aspiring leaders that have been going for that negotiation because they have experienced getting laid off before even 2 years is up.
Yeah.
So what would you do?
So these kinds of negotiations are common for C-suite
Mhm.
positions. They're becoming a little bit more common for a click down from that. They're pretty rare below that, but again, you know, when we talk about employment agreement, this is kind of the thing that that you can look at in the employment agreement. Sometimes it'll just have it up front, but I do think that it's worth talking about, especially if you're talking about other things in the employment agreement. And one thing to know is if you're talking about a publicly traded company, if you go to sec.gov, you can look in the proxy to see what the executives, the named executive officers have as severance. But you know, again, it is definitely something to be thinking about. Yeah. I can't hear you.
People are asking if the session is being recorded. Yes, it's being recorded. In the next few days, it'll be on the IAN website for review, along with the other Path to Next series, which I'll give you a highlights reel in a moment. No, there's no downloadables because Kate had a couple slides and we're having a conversation with the community. So we don't have anything like that for you. Just wanted to share that. I've got a couple more questions and I'd like to try to do that in the next like 5 to 6 minutes. So we have, are there industry norms for sign-on bonuses like X number of months? No. Okay.
No.
And you answered like 10% is kind of the what
It's, again, it's super general, and, some people get a lot more than that. And so I don't want to just say that, if you're asking for more than that, you're wrong. But again, you have a better chance of getting more if you have reasons behind what you want, right? So if you have walkaway value and you can help them understand, this is to make up for what I'm leaving on the table, that's when they start getting a little bit more. Before we move to the next one, I know I've seen some things in the chat asking about contractor rates, consulting stuff.
yeah.
We have another book.
I couldn't find mine. I have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
So Name Your Price is the book that I wrote on setting and raising your coaching and consulting rates. It talks about, how to set hourly rates, why we don't use hourly rates, how to make packages, a whole ton of stuff about terms you should include. So anyway, there is a resource for you.
Excellent. It's a great book. That's another good one to have. I have one more in the Q&A. So if you have a question sitting in the chat and you did not put it in the Q&A, that's what's happening. So I've had situations where the recruiter told me that the high end of the posted range for a position was not real and nobody gets paid that. That surprised me, but is there a response to something like that?
Well, yeah. And so it seems stupid and counterintuitive, but what is actually happening in a lot of places, and I work with a lot of companies on pay transparency and, all this kind of stuff. And so what a lot of places are doing is they're just putting in the salary range for the job, right? And a lot of times that's 80 to 120% of a midpoint value, boom, you're done. So let's imagine that 80 to 120%. If the midpoint is 100,000, that means the minimum's 80, the maximum's 120,000. And they're posting that whole wide range. And in reality, most people are paid somewhere around the midpoint, and that kind of jazz. But it's not realistic for somebody brand new to the organization to come in and be paid at the top end of their pay range, which makes me crazy. I invite all of my clients to post minimum to midpoint of the range because most people get hired in that, bottom part of the range when they're being hired from the outside. And it's like, look, it's not a realistic thing if everybody gets hired minimum to midpoint to be posting midpoint to max. I mean, I encourage them to post the entire range internally, but for external, it's dumb. So
I'm going to jump in because we have 2 minutes left because, we Intel folks, we like to be on time, and I got to punt this to James. So what I want to remind our community is there are now 4 sessions in the Path to Next series that you can go back and review. Job Search Strategy 101, Modern Resume Development, that we had a panel with three amazing experts answering questions. Job search strategy using the 2-hour job search. And now Kate's session will be live in the next couple of days on salary negotiation. And you're not even going to believe this, but we have a special guest announcing it now. March 12th, we have Steve Dalton, the author of the 2-hour job search, and he will be on for a discussion with me and our community. So bring all your questions, connect with Kate, connect with me. If you have any sessions that you're really interested in hearing about, we want you to answer that question in the poll that we have going in the Intel Alumni Network group in LinkedIn. And we will add that link to that. I put it at the beginning, but I'm going to put it in now. And then we've got future session interest poll right now at live. Thank you, Michael. And then let's see. Kate, thank you. You're the best.
Thank
you so
you.
much. James, I'm gonna punt it to you. I don't know if I missed anything with that.
No, I don't think you did. I think we got everything. Michael, I hope we also, one of the things that we need to do in 2025, folks, is it doesn't cost us a lot of money to run these sessions, but it does cost something. So if you guys would be out there, you like what you heard here, please consider making a contribution. Michael has posted that. In addition to the March 12th event, and by the way, I don't know where my head went. I've got the video on, but my head is gone. So anyway, I am here. The next big event we're going to have is going to be the 4th or 5th in our series around AI, and this is going to be around AI infrastructure. You look at this as, what is the future of Moore's law? What is the role of photonics in migrating to a new type of computing architecture, as well as the energy demand requirements for realizing the growth of generative AI, all of which are very, very hot topics right now. I think that is probably it, unless Howard, you think I missed something here.
No, I think got it all covered except for your head. That's the only thing that's
except for my head. But everyone, please encourage your friends to join. This works when we all get together as a community, as Gina mentioned at the beginning. And I, again, truly want to, we are so blessed to have Gina. She is now a member of the board, right, Gina? Yeah. Or you're thinking about it. Okay. Anyway, Gina, thank you so much. And Kate, it is so good to reconnect with you. I know we knew each other and crossed paths sometime at Intel. And with that, folks, I think we're done. And thank you so much, both.
See you
Gina
March
and
12th.
Kate.
March 12th. We'll see you
Remember
there.
March
Steve
12th.
Dalton.
Hey, guys, thank you so
Bye,
much.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Michael. Well done.